Welcome to the Voices from the Sandhills Oral History Project. My name is Christopher Thrasher and I will be your host. We are filming on location today at the Museum of the Fayetteville Independent Light Infantry, and my guest is Major Bruce Dawes, who serves as the unit's commander. Major Dawes, thank you so much for taking a few minutes out of your busy day to chat with me.
Thank you.
So if I can, I'd like to start off, what is the Fayetteville Independent Light Infantry?
Well, it's had different roles in its history. It was organized on 23 August 1793 under George Washington's administration as a part of the militia system. It served as an active deployable unit through World War I, and at the beginning of World War II, they were not utilizing the militia unit, so we were Civil Defense Police and later designated as the state's historic military command.
Very good. So you have so many great artifacts and so many great stories here in your museum, but I want to highlight just a couple. So what can you tell me about the Lafayette carriage?
Well, the Lafayette carriage is very symbolic to our ceremonial history, even during the time that we were an active military unit. In times of peace, we were involved in ceremonial events, and one of the great ceremonial events in our history was escorting the Marquis de Lafayette when he visited Fayetteville on 4-5 March of 1825. We met Lafayette at the Clareton Bridge, escorted him into town, and followed him everywhere he went during his brief stay in Fayetteville, provided not only a ceremonial presence, but a bodyguard escort for Lafayette. The carriage represents a carriage that was made in Fayetteville. It's not the carriage he came into Fayetteville or left Fayetteville in, but a carriage that was used to escort him to different events while he was here in Fayetteville. It went into a prominent family, one of the ranking military officers at the time. They later donated it to the Fayetteville Independent Light Infantry, and it is certainly one of our cherished artifacts today.
So I see you're wearing a very impressive uniform. Is that the same uniform that would have been worn at the time of Lafayette's visit?
It is. This is one of a progression of uniforms, certainly not the 1793 uniform, which we have a reproduction upstairs representing that style uniform. But we use this one as a ceremonial uniform, and one of the important roles of the FILI is to provide a ceremonial presence, posting colors and doing other ceremonial type duties, and this is the ceremonial uniform used.
Very good. So you mentioned that the last time the unit deployed as a unit was during World War I. I know you have some great World War I artifacts in your collection. Could you talk a little bit about the Fayetteville Independent Light Infantry in World War I and some of the things you have in your collection from that era?
Certainly. In that portion of the museum, we start with the border dispute of 1916 because that was on the eve of World War I. We were deployed down to the Mexican border. We served down there. When we came back to Fayetteville, we were almost immediately mobilized for World War I as a part of the 30th Division. This little rifle company, last engagement as a military unit, distinguished itself. 6 of its members received the Distinguished Service Cross, one step down from the Medal of Honor. There were multiple Silver Star recipients, Purple Heart. There was right at 30 killed in action, a couple that died after the war as a result of being gassed in the war. As Fort Bragg is coming into existence in 1918, we didn't know, but that signaled the end of our active role in defense of the country. By the time World War II came around, we were no longer viable as a militia unit.
So how did the unit's role change after World War I?
Well, after World War I, we assumed that we were still part of the active military deployment plan, but it was the end really for the militia system because we follow the ancient customs of the militia, which are very important. Besides being a ceremonial unit and having a museum, we curate and preserve the ancient customs of the militia, and that's very important. We've got our original records, so we know how we operated. We also have a portfolio of the militia laws printed at that time, and we very strictly adhere to those standards as a real important role, I think. We are the only historic militia in North Carolina currently, and are a charter member of the Centennial Legion of Historic Military Commands, organized at the nation's centennial on 4 July 1876. They took the oldest military commands from the 13 original colonies and structured them into a larger unit known as the Centennial Legion. We're very active with the Centennial Legion today. We meet together, old units from the North and South, and have great time. All these old units have their own traditions and customs. So we entertain guests from other units, and they like to come down and see how we celebrate. And on occasions, we visit those units and learn their ancient customs.
So are there any particular ancient customs that you'd like to talk about or like to share that's interesting?
One of the things that is a big thing in our calendar year is what we call our annual muster, and that's our birthday, 23 August. So every 23 August we have a formal dinner. We'll invite VIPs and members of Centennial companies. We meet on our old original parade ground at the corner of Meeting and Cool Spring Street, where we have our elections, and probably one of the old traditions is our company drink. We have a strong Scottish presence, so Drambuie is the company drink, nodding our head to Flora MacDonald, who resided here briefly. Drambuie is the private recipe of the Bonnie Prince Charles, who Flora MacDonald aided out of Scotland after the defeat at Culloden Moor. So, those are typical of some of the things that we recognize. Too many traditions probably to talk about in this brief period of time.
Well, I think that's a great start and a great little introduction to some of those traditions. So after World War I, the unit no longer actively deployed, but I believe you have some items in your collection that are a lot more recent than World War I. Could you talk about any of those for us?
Absolutely. So after we were no longer an active unit, beginning in World War II, we had members of the FILI that left the FILI, joined one of the branches of the armed services, and as they deployed in World War II, they would send back war trophies. And we have some very impressive war trophies, to include a bust of Adolf Hitler that was in the quadrangle close to the Hitler bunker. It's one of only two, and it was sculpted by a very renowned sculptor artist. And so it's on display along with a day book from Martin Bormann, Hitler's secretary, and that was actually in the Berlin bunker and retrieved by one of our members. Currently, we have things like a portrait of Saddam Hussein, who that portrait was in one of the castles, one of his castles, and was liberated and sent back here. So,
what role does the Fayetteville Independent Light Infantry play in helping our current military?
Well, that's a good question. We support the military in a number of ways. We have functions for the military down here if they request it. And yesterday we had a group of IG officers doing officer professional development, and they asked that we provide them with a program outlining the history of the militia system and how the militia fit into national defense. So we had a lengthy conversation concerning that and a tour of the museum. Also, we have many military personnel, National Guard, reservists, active duty, retired, that are members here. In fact, an interesting member is a general officer retired that he said the highest rank he wanted to hold in the FILI was corporal. And we made him a corporal, and he used to like to say that he was the highest ranking corporal ever to serve in the FILI. But hanging on the wall over here, we have a picture of William Rufus King, a corporal in the FILI and Vice President of the United States. So we've had many distinguished military members, some not known to history, but absolutely amazing careers in the military that have passed through the ranks here.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about the Fayetteville Independent Light Infantry today?
Certainly. One of the cornerstones of the FILI is that it's a corps of gentlemen, and you often hear about an officer and a gentleman. Every member of the FILI is expected to be a gentleman. We go back to day one when they adopted for their motto, "He that hath no stomach to this fight, let him depart," which is Shakespeare's Henry V as he's giving that motivational speech before the Battle of Agincourt. So that kind of frames the mentality of the FILI at that period of time. I think we mentioned the Scottish heritage of the FILI. Our original commander, Captain Robert Adam of Greenock, Scotland, was a person that set the tone for the FILI. Very generous towards the FILI, a very good leader, a disciplinarian who served up until the time of his death. And we certainly instill all of those values on any new member coming into the FILI. We also have a no tolerance for people that do not behave as gentlemen or act out in a way that is not becoming to the Fayetteville Light Infantry. They are dismissed from the ranks.
So what can you tell me about Martha Dewell's relationship with the Fayetteville Independent Light Infantry?
She was our first lady, a position we created for Martha, probably the only first lady. She was the first and probably the last. And that position never occurred in the FILI prior to Martha, but she was such an exceptional person. And anybody watching this that remembers Martha remembers all of the wonderful things that she did for this community. She was a World War II bride, came over from France, native of France, and when she arrived in Fayetteville and her feet hit the ground, it was running. She did just so many amazing things, the Botanical Garden, the International Folk Festival, the founder of the Lafayette Society, raising the money for the Lafayette statue. Her work did not end until she passed away. And she was given the great honor of being escorted to church service when she died and to her final resting place in the Lafayette carriage. We say now that the Lafayette carriage will never leave the armory, and she was one of those people that was so exceptional and loved Lafayette so much that she had to be escorted to her final resting place in the carriage.
A fitting tribute, no doubt.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Greatly missed.
No doubt. So I believe that Martha Dewell earned a remarkable achievement from her home country of France. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Certainly the very prestigious Legion of Merit was presented, and that medal is on display here in the FILI along with a picture of Martha. Martha's home was really just kind of like an embassy for France. The French flag flew in the backyard anytime French people came over. She also established the Friends of Sandhills, so any French guest would arrive at her home, be graciously entertained. They would come down here, general officers from France and dignitaries and mayors and all manner of distinguished people. Again, a remarkable lady.
So I believe you also have a Medal of Honor in your collection.
We do. No FILI member has received the Medal of Honor, Distinguished Service Crosses, during our active duty. And since then, there have been members. Rudy Hernandez was a member, a Korean War recipient. But currently, we have a Medal of Honor on display. One of our members, Captain Showalter, who's our company adjutant, retired colonel from the Army, his father, who was also a colonel in the Korean War, received the Medal of Honor, and his citation is absolutely superhuman and amazing.
Well, Major Doss, thank you so much for letting me come over and share some of your stories with me. And thank all of you for tuning in to the Voices from the Sandhills Oral History Project.